Hey everybody, welcome to another mobility routine. This one's focused on shoulders. Two things to talk about real quick. One, do not push through any sort of pain, pinch, or discomfort. And number two, at any point, stop the video, do more reps, do more sets. I'm only showing you some just for a daily movement practice. If you want to train it, increase the reps and sets, but I'll give you some recommendations through the voiceover. Let's get started. Okay guys, first thing up we're going to start with are half kneeling shoulder cars. I recommend having a tennis ball or something to hold on to just create some tension and squeeze through the wrist. So the arm that's working is going to stay locked out and we're going to be on the opposite knee being up. We're shooting for only about 5 reps here per side. Use this more as a warm-up. The big rule I have with cars is only the joint we're focusing on is moving. What that means is everything else is like a statue. I'm trying not to open my chest. I'm trying not to rotate through my thoracic spine, my lumbar spine, anything of that nature. So if we start from the side here, I keep the elbow locked out. I bring the shoulder into flexion. I rotate internally all the way as I reach behind. And then I reset, reach, and go all the way through. Again, I'm starting with 5 reps here. You guys can do as many as you want, so feel free to pause before I go to the other side here. So as we switch to the other side here, it's important to note if you get any pain or pinch or discomfort during the shoulder car, I want you to reduce the range of motion. What I mean by that is you're not going to bring your arm as high. So most people would start here, they'd probably go to about shoulder height and then start to rotate and turn out. Same thing on this side. I'm shooting for 5 reps here. Use this as a warm-up and also a movement screen. See where you have sticky points, see where you don't move well, see what doesn't feel great. It's a good way to just see the current health of your joints. And if I haven't discussed before, CAR stands for controlled articular rotations. Basically, we're doing some big joint circles, at the base of it, but a few reps on each side here. Feel free to pause if you want more work. Next up, we're getting into the shoulder capsule. So what I need from you is to either have a carpet slider or even a towel, something to place your elbow on so you're not just rubbing it against the floor. Think about more for support. What we're doing on a capsule car is we are rotating back and forth from internal rotation to external rotation. I want you to hit the end range on both. For this, I'm shooting about 20 reps. I'm calling open 1, close the other, so external 1, internal 2, going back and forth. Most of my weight is on my knees and my opposite hand. I'm only putting maybe 20% effort onto my elbow. It's gently resting, but we're focusing on squeezing out rotation in the rotator cuff or the deep capsular tissues of the shoulder. As I switch to my left side here, it's important to note any pain or discomfort, whether it's in the elbow, the shoulder, please don't push through that. If you have no pain or discomfort during this, really try to squeeze out like you're wringing out a towel, external and internal, back and forth. If you notice here, I'm trying not to use the rest of my body. I have a little bit of a tilt when I go to external, fairly normal. External rotation is much more difficult than internal in this position based off how we have the humerus and the scap, but just really trying to keep everything else from moving. Some people like to use the low back to get that motion or sometimes in the hip. Shoot for 20 reps total back and forth here. Pause if you need more. Okay, next up here we have some shoulder external rotation end range training. These are called liftoffs. I highly recommend a block or a foam roller or something to elevate. It's going to be your elbow and then your wrist. I'm starting with the beginner version. Having the elbow elevated is going to make this movement easier in the sense of less range of motion, but we're still getting to our end range external rotation. I'm going to do about 6 to 8 reps here before I go to what I call the intermediate version, but this would be considered the beginner version, having my elbow up on something. I'm trying to squeeze my wrist, squeeze my hand together, and lift through off the ground. So now I've moved to intermediate. I've taken the block out. I'm starting in a super neutral position, and I'm just trying to move my, think about wrist or forearm off the ground. I don't want to crank back on my wrist. I don't want to extend through my upper back. It's not going to be a ton of motion because this is called an end range liftoff. We're close to the end range of motion we have. Then we get into the hardest version of this, which is elevating the wrist. I have some motion here, not a ton, but it shouldn't be an insane amount. If it is, great, you're awesome, you're crushing it. Most of us are going to be just getting maybe a millimeter or two off, nothing insane here. So if this is what it looks like, that's okay. I only did a few on that side before I switched to the other side. Same thing though. I'm starting beginner, then I'm going to go intermediate, then I'm going to go advanced. So beginner, elbow elevated, intermediate, arm flat on the ground, advanced, wrist elevated. Shoot between 6 to 8 reps in all of these. If you know you can't progress to the next one, just do all your sets at the progression you can do. Last but absolutely not least are shoulder swimmers. These might be one of the more difficult motions if you do them correctly. What we're going to do is start with our hands behind our neck. We're going to lift our elbows off the ground, engage our scaps, then lift the wrists, and try to rotate as we reach as high as we can towards the ceiling throughout the rep. Where people go wrong is they either rush it or they really don't try to go to your end range of motion. Think about like when you do a shoulder car earlier. We're trying to get as much motion as possible, isolating the joint. This just happens to be a little more dynamic, and we're going against gravity because we are laying prone on our stomachs. I did about 5 or 6 reps here. You're more than welcome to do more. These might be the most challenging. If you guys are blowing through this, go ahead and grab some light weights, maybe a 2.5, if not less. You could even squeeze onto tennis balls. But this is shoulder swimmers. This is the last part we have today for the mobility series. I appreciate you guys doing this series with me. It was under 10 minutes. Most of you can pause it and double this and take 20. But stay tuned next week. We're going to dive into a little bit of spine work.